Today, we are talking about what is known as slope-intercept form. This is one of the forms that we use when we are talking about equations of lines. We've graphed points. We may have even graphed equations before. Have we graphed equations? Linear equations. We've graphed linear equations, but sometimes I get confused between 7, 8, and this. But we've graphed linear equations, but what we haven't done is gone backwards. We haven't written how to write an equation out. So today what we're going to look at is the first way, which is called slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is the form y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. Now, here's the kicker with all this. When you look at the equation, you should recognize, right off the bat, you should be able to recognize some of the letters in there that we've seen before. What letters come out automatically to you? Y and X. Because those are what we use for ordered pairs. X comma Y is ordered pairs. And in this case, the X and the Y, on it they stand for any ordered pair that will make this equation true. So those are our open variables. They're wide open variables. That means M and B are not open variables. That means they have to be numbers. We have to find them. Now, M should be a variable we've seen before. What does M stand for? Slope. M stands for slope. It is the slope of the line. B, have we talked about lowercase b before?
I've seen it.
I think we have once.
He said specifically with a...
Yeah, what have we talked about?
Well, like you just said, like you tell us later.
No. It's something when we did graphing. We talked about it. It was something with the intercepts. Matter of fact, this was the Y-intercept. So little b is, in this case, is the Y-intercept. Just as a reminder, what is the Y-intercept? No, not the vertical line. What is the Y-intercept? What is the Y-intercept?
It's when y can be anything and x is always 0.
X is 0, Y could be any number, but what's unique about the Y-intercept? I'm looking for something else.
It mirrors the x-intercept?
No, it doesn't mirror it at all.
The line intercepts the y-axis.
It's where the line crosses the Y-axis. So if we look at that, and I need to move this up a little bit to write it. So if we look at this, if we have our graph, if we look at a graph, we know how to find the slope, and that right there is the Y-intercept. It's the place where the line crosses the Y-axis. So if I was to give you an equation, y equals 1/4 x minus 6, can you tell me what is the slope and what is the y-intercept? So tell me what is in the equation y equals 1/4 x minus 6. What is the slope and what is the y-intercept?
The slope is 1/4?
The slope is 1/4, and what is the y-intercept?
-6.
Careful with that. Some people will agree with you and say, yes, the y-intercept is -6. I unfortunately do not agree with you. and here's why. The y-intercept, by definition, it is the ordered pair, is the location where the line crosses the y-axis. Well, if it's a location, it's an ordered pair, correct? So I truly believe that you always write the y-intercept as an ordered pair. So what would be the y-intercept then as an ordered pair?
0 and -6.
There you go. 0, -6. And it's kind of important to put that 0 there. It kind of helps to put that 0 there.
Wait, so like, I'm kind of confused. Like, if this is all on the graph, right?
It's all going to be on a graph, yes.
And so if you're doing slope, how do you graph that?
Ah, we're not there yet.
Okay.
We will get there. Take a look at this equation. Negative 4x plus y equals 2. From this equation, can you tell me what is the slope and what is the y-intercept? I want you to take a few minutes, so we'll pause the video, and I want you to think about it. How could you find the slope and the y-intercept? Okay, so if we were to take a look at this, look at the equation. The first thing is the equation, if you notice, is not in slope-intercept form. So we can't just look at it and go, oh, the y-intercept should be 2. I don't know that. I need to put this into slope-intercept form. So what could I do to put this into slope-intercept form?
Add 4x to both sides.
Add 4x to both sides. So if I add 4x to both sides, the negative 4x and the 4x cancel out. I'm left with y equals. Now, what is 2 plus 4x?
4x.
It is 4x plus 2, and I'm glad that you reverse those because in slope-intercept form, the x term always comes first. Now, do I know the slope?
Yeah.
What is it?
4.
It is 4. Do I know the y-intercept?
Yes.
What is it?
0.
0, 2. So it was 0, 2 in this case. But it might not always be. So this is a way we can use it to quickly find the slope and the y-intercept. Now, going back to a question that you asked earlier. How do you graph an equation in slope-intercept form? So what we're going to talk about is graphing y equals mx plus b. This is really the coolest thing possible because before when we graph lines, I think I said to you, you got to find 5 points or 4 points. So you had to plug in numbers and figure out what it was and plug in, and it was going back and forth. Now, it's very simple. Step 1, graph the y-intercept. If you graph the y-intercept, it's helpful because that becomes what we call the starting point. So this is the starting point. Then, part 2, step 2. We're going to use the slope to find a second point. Now, I want you to think about something for a second. I told you slope was equal to something. It was 2 words that I used. Actually, it was 3 words, but one of the words is over, so I'm not going to worry about that. Does anyone remember the other 2 words I used? Rise over run. Rise over run. Think about what that tells you. Rise over run. What does that indicate to you? What do you think about?
Y over x, because the y is rising.
Yes, the y is rising and the x is running. Absolutely. But what else do you think it tells you?
It's like
It is a ratio, but that's not going to help me in this case.
It kind of tells you that it should be going upwards and rising instead of running.
Not necessarily, because the rise could be a negative rise.
Negative rise. So it could be going
But here's what it tells me. The rise tells me I can go up or down. The rise tells me I can go up or down. How would you know if I go up or down?
If it's positive or negative.
What, Mark?
If it's positive or negative.
If it's positive, I go up. If it's negative, I go down. What is the run going to tell me? Left or right. How do I know which one is which?
Positive or negative.
Positive or negative. Positive will be
to the right.
to the right. Negative will be to the left. Most of the time when we deal with slope, are you going to see a negative sign on the bottom? No. So usually we say the run is to the right. All right, now let's look at how this works. Graph y equals 2/3 x plus 1. So I'm going to draw my graph here. And the first thing I said to do was graph the y-intercept. Okay, what's the y-intercept?
1.
1. Nope, that's not it. 0, 1. Thank you. 0, 1. What is the slope in this equation? 2/3. What's the rise? 2. What's the run?
3.
Tells me to do that. It says start at the starting point. What's the starting point?
0.
The
No,
y-intercept.
The y-intercept is the starting point. The origin is not the starting point in this case. The starting point is the y-intercept. Starting at the y-intercept, this is going to tell me to go up 2 spaces, go over 3 spaces. So when I do that, I get to the point 3, 3, because I went up 2 spaces and over 3 spaces. Now that I have 2 points, all I have to do is connect the dots, and there is the line. Now, what does that line represent? What is that line representing?
An ordered pair.
Yes, but it's a little bit more than that. What is it representing?
Well, y and x can equal to make the equation true.
Yeah.
So
So what does the line represent?
Slope.
No, not slope.
What the equation look like?
No.
Direct radiation.
Nope.
Y-intercept and slope.
No.
Constant ratio.
No.
The answer to Y.
No. But you're closer. The line, the graph of the line represents every ordered pair that makes the equation true. I can't list them all, but I could show them all. Every ordered pair on this line makes the equation true. And folks, there are some points on here. It could be the point 2.9999999, comma, whatever it is. I don't know what that is, but it's on the line. I can't list it, I can't show it, I can graph it though. So that line represents every ordered pair that makes the equation true. Okay, let's have you try one on your own. So I would like you to graph y equals negative 1/3 x minus 2. Pause the video and try to graph that equation. If you did this right, you would have taken your graph and you would have made a graph and you would have said, I start at the point 0, -2. The slope is -1/3. That tells me to go down 1 and over 3. And so my graph looks like, oh, that is terrible. Let's try that. Let's try that again. You know, a lot of times, by the way, when I am graphing a line, 2 points make it really difficult for me. I will put in a third point. So if I want to do a third point, I could either start at the new point I just created and go down 1 and over 3 again, or I can reverse it. If I went down 1 and right 3, what would be the opposite? Up 1 and left 3. Now that I have 3 points, now it makes it a little bit easier to draw my line. And there it is. Okay? Take a look at this question here, and I'm going to type this one out. So give me a second here to set that up. All right, here we go. A kite flying 60 feet in the air is falling. The altitude of the kite can be represented by the equation y equals -x plus 60. Where x is the time in seconds. So, first part A. Graph the equation. That's the easy part. Part B. Describe what the Y-intercept and slope represent. Okay. So there's 2 parts to this. A kite flying 60 feet in the air is falling. The altitude of the kite can be represented by the equation y equals -x plus 60, where x is time in seconds. Graph the equation and describe what the y-intercept and the slope represent. Pause the video and try this on your own. If you graphed it correctly, you would have graphed it like so. Now, I don't want to have to make 60 marks up my graph, so I'm going to go up by 10s. 10, 20, 30, 40, I'm not even going to do it right here, 50, 60, and then I'm going to go by 5s here. 5, 10, 15, 20. This is a hard one to graph a little bit because it is going to start up at 60. But the slope being negative, or negative, it's negative than x, it's -1 times x, which means the slope is -1, which means I literally go down 1 over 1. So it's down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. It's going to be, it's very hard to graph down 1 over 1 because I didn't go up by 1s. But I know by equivalent fractions that -1 over 1 is also the same as -10 over 10. Yes?
Yeah.
So that means I could go down 10 and over 10. Down 10 and over 10 more, which will give me my graph of my line. And there is my line. There's the graph. Now, what does the y-intercept and the slope represent? Well, simply, the y-intercept is easy. The y-intercept is the
Kite at its peak.
kite's height at its peak, because this represents the height. And we know the x, because we were told, is the time. So the 60, or the y-intercept, is the peak height of the kite. What does the slope represent? What does the slope represent?
Like how many feet is dropping per second?
Good. How many feet per second the kite is dropping? The slope is feet per second that the kite is dropping. Because we know that slope is y over x. It's got to be the y-axis over the x-axis. Height in feet, time in seconds. So the slope is feet per second that the kite is dropping. So it's dropping 1 foot for every second. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Your assignment